want you to come.
Yesterday's mass was enough for me, thank you.
It'll be easier to get him to come if you came too.
Did you enjoy going to church when you were his age?
No. My mom made me and it worked.
My child is doing troubling things. What am I going to do?
David, wake up. Boy, what did you do? Dad.
Hey, boy, key here is for you to hold on to the Lord. That's what's going to keep you going.
Be in the world and stay connected.
You've had a close relationship with Jesus since you were a boy, as did me, as did your mom. This is who you are. It's who we are. We don't have this. What do we got? Where do we go?
Hey everybody, thanks for coming today. My name is David Nin. I will be moderating the panel today. I'm the Director of Publicity at Hohenberg, our distributor based in New York, and I'm really proud today to moderate this panel. It's called Funding Faith, a case study to getting your film made no matter what. So I'm just gonna go through and introduce if each of the people on the panel can introduce yourselves and maybe just say like how you're involved with the film and a little bit about your background.
So my name is Eli Daughdrill. I'm the writer-director of the movie. This is my first feature. Prior to that, I've made several shorts as well as a documentary about my brother and his life with schizophrenia. I'm also a professor, and I run the film production program at Long Beach City College out in California.
Hi, my name's Todd Remis. I'm one of the executive producers of this film, also with two others that are playing at this festival, Jezebel and Thirst Street. I'm an independent producer based in Boston, and yeah, just involved with a bunch of projects.
Mike Ryan, producer on Faith, one of the producers of Faith. And what I do is I develop projects, get them cast, and then I try to find the money, and then I get them shot. I think this was my 32nd film. I also produced Free Indeed, which was shot and made here in Memphis.
Hi everybody, I'm Sharri Hefner. I'm a producer on the project. I was also UPM line producer, second unit director, and support for all of the departments.
Wow. Great. Okay, I really want this to be a conversation, so if anybody wants to chime in, please do, because we have a lot of ground to cover here with looking at funding for this film. So I think what would be great is, Eli, if you can just talk about how you assembled the team that you have and how you even went about that in the first place.
So I wrote the first draft of the screenplay 10 years ago. And then it was a process of trying to figure out how I could actually get it made. And I tried a couple of different things. Neither one of them worked. So then I decided that, well, I'm just going to look for people, a producer who does stuff like this, that feels like this, that's small, that's sort of arty, and like feels like it's of a similar sort of taste. So I just researched. I just got on IMDb Pro and I researched, okay, who's produced films in the last 10 years that I really loved that are, but that cost less than $2 million to make, because I knew that, you know, it was the first feature, I'm not gonna get a ton of money, so what can I find? And I found Mike, who had produced two films that I thought were absolutely brilliant. Old Joy, Kelly Reichardt's film, Old Joy.
Which is Kino Lorber.
There you go. And Phil Morrison's Junebug, which Amy Adams was nominated for an Oscar for. And so that was material that I felt like it was in the same family with my script. It was a style, both those films are in a style that I really appreciate and that felt right. And so I sent the script to Mike, and he responded. And then we just kind of went on a process of rewriting the script, doing drafts of the script, and then trying to attach cast and trying to find money. Sharri and I actually know each other as colleagues. We're both teachers, professors at the same film program, and Sharri teaches, I'll let her tell you, she teaches everywhere. And I had made a short, and we didn't really, there was stuff that we didn't do paperwork-wise. Like, I don't remember what, I don't even know if you remember this.
No.
And we had screwed some stuff up with our SAG contract or whatever. And who do I know can help me clean this up? Oh, I bet Sharri knows some of this stuff. So I called her, and Sharri knew everything that I needed to know about the SAG stuff. And I was like, okay, the next short I'm gonna make, I'm gonna see if Sharri wants to help me. And so I made another short the next year, and I asked her, and she produced it for me, and it went really well, and she's really smart, and really, just really great about running a set and being organized and seeing a project all the way through. And so then I asked her if she'd want to be on board as well on Faith, and she said yes.
Well, what was really interesting, right before I came to this panel, I actually was looking at a video that's on YouTube. Everybody should look at it, where Mike, you actually were here at this festival 2 years ago, where your whole hour on that YouTube is talking about how to get money, how to engage, how to get your work out there. And one of the things that struck me was you did say that if you are a filmmaker, you need to be an IMDb pro, you need to do your research, you need to look at films that might mirror yours. And so I guess my big question for you, as somebody who's very prolific within the industry and you've worked with a lot of different kinds of films, how did Eli engage you, and how did he approach you that made you want to look at the script and attach to the script?
I mean, for me, one of the consistent things that in a lot of the films that I've produced, going back to Junebug, and is that I'm able to engage the agencies to get actors involved based on the quality of the script. And I come from an acting background. So my whole thing is an awards film. I'm making dramas that go to win awards and play at the top festivals. And all level of actors want to be in Venice, they want to be in Toronto, they want to be on the red carpet of the top international festivals. And so for me, it starts right away with the script. Does the script have a role in there that's going to engage an actor to the degree that they're going to want to participate for no money? And there are a lot of actors who are making a lot of money that are completely frustrated with their TV roles, and they want, specifically women, and they want fully developed roles. And I've made films like Maya Dardell, where before we even wrote the script, I said there are a lot of 50-year-old women actresses that want roles in which they can be smart, they can be curious, they can also be sexy with younger people, and they can have confidence and they can have fears. And those write that role, and we'll get great actors. So in what it starts with, is the answer, is great material. And that's what Eli had. He had a very engaging piece that was going to challenge an actor to convey emotion, not through dialogue, but through the way he wrote it. And I make cinema, I don't make TV, and I don't even make indie films. I make art films, which means that they're engaging the viewer in a non-dialogue, non-plot-driven way. And not many people can write that, but that's what actors love, to be able to speak through their eyes and through their gestures. And so it starts with the text, it's what he wrote.
Great. And Sharri, so you both are colleagues and friends, and so can you talk a little bit about the shorthand you might have with each other? You were able to help him out with his previous work, and then how did that evolve into working on this feature, which is his first feature?
Well, I was really attracted. First of all, Eli's very stubborn in his approach to things, but with a very strong voice. And he didn't. There were certain things with his vision. I felt like he was uncompromising. And for me, those are the kind of filmmakers I want to support. So really valued that. And then with the story, I come from a similar background. My dad. There are 13 kids in my dad's family. 4 of them have started churches. They don't really get along with one another. And I saw the story as sort of a healing piece for people of faith, and really wanted to do, essentially I was in for the film, whatever size, whatever it turned out to be. I was there to do the same thing, any which way we got it done.
Great. And then Todd, I know you were new to this project and you didn't know Eli or Sharri before. Can you talk about how you came on board as executive producer?
Yeah, sure. For me, I think this business has been very much about relationships and trying to get involved with people that are successful and experienced and well-connected in this business. And I had met Mike a number of years ago, and we've talked, many cases about various films, and none of them really lined up for my involvement. And then when he approached me about this one and what their needs were at the time, it seemed to work out. So I got involved, totally through my connection and relationship with Mike and his past work and experience.
Great. So Eli, this panel is making this film no matter what. So you did it no matter what. You got it out there. You world premiered here at Indie Memphis. Can you maybe talk about what were like some of the major challenges? I'm sure it's the same ones that every filmmaker goes through, which is like funding, casting. What are some learnings that you can share with our audience from going from shorts and docs to a first major feature like this?
Well, just in terms of, the major obstacles are just what you said. It's
money.
It's money and casting, and money is directly related to casting, and casting is difficult, especially when you're doing your first feature, because the first thing that if you get a script to an agent or an actor or manager or whomever, who the hell are you? Like, they don't know who you are, and so why would I consider reading this? I mean, again, that's one of the things that I think is so useful to have someone like Mike on the team, because, well, this is Mike Ryan project, and that has meaning to the agencies. So that's a learning process, but even with that, you still have a hell of a time getting people attached. Because there's a million people who want famous actors in their movies, and so they get offers all the time, and they may or may not read your script. I mean, some people, I will tell you, like, there were multiple actors who read the script, and I've come to love the actors who turned it down almost immediately. Mm-hmm. Those people are great, because it's just an immediate answer, and you can move on to the next person. There's some folks who take 6 months to read your script, and you can't do anything until they read your script. You've got an offer out to somebody. I can't then just make another offer to a different actor. We have to wait, and they take 6 months or whatever, and it's brutal. So that just understanding that part of the process. I mean, I will say, like, when when Mike responded to the script, in terms of like, what did you learn? Okay, great. I guess we're going into pre-production like on Tuesday, right? And 7 years later, then we finally did, or 6 years later, whatever it was. I mean, so that's a big part of the process. And then, you're just discovering how hard. I think everybody's notion of, if I have an idea for a movie, I have a script for a script for a movie, and people are responding to the idea, the money will then come easily, because it doesn't seem far-fetched, because these are real people who are up here who are saying, yes, this is of value, and then you get actors who are known, this is of value, we're going to do it, so then the money's going to come, and it doesn't just come. So
it doesn't roll in.
No, it doesn't roll in. So I mean, that just I describe it to my students as you're Sisyphus, and you're rolling the rock up the hill, and you're being punished, not for the same reasons, but you're going to be Sisyphus up the hill, and you're going to do it over and over again.
Great. Maybe each of you can talk about your role in getting this made, getting it to the next level. Was this an actor, Mike, that you had approached, that you knew through your connections, and also looking at budget? I don't know if you're comfortable sharing the budget of the film. I know you all also did some crowdfunding, and I'd love to touch on that, whether or not you feel that's a valid option to even fund. You guys raised $13,000. That's probably a drop in the bucket. But you probably got every little bit helps, and you probably got some audience to engage in that.
Let me ask before. Sorry, let me just add that because that brings up one thing that I learned. You said, "What do you learn?" Every cent matters. I remember, you hear about a grant. Oh, how much is the grant? Well, it's like $3,000. $3,000 isn't going to do anything.
And then you have to sit there and write out the grant.
You got to do all the work for the grant proposal, but there are absolutely moments where those grant proposals that I didn't write for $3,000, you are regretting so much because, my God, you could use $3,000 when you're in post-production or whatever. Every single dollar, anything that's possible, absolutely matters.
So, at any one time, I've usually got between 8 and 10 films that are cast and are ready to shoot that I'm actively looking for money for. I shot 4 films last year, and last year there was about 9. And the way this happened, what I'm constantly doing is looking for investors, and I look for investors by literally just going through film catalogs, looking at Sundance, tracking back the executive producers, seeing who's new on the scene, looking them up. And, generally speaking, in our space, we have a lot of affluent people that come into the indie space pretty much every 3 or 5 years. They usually last 3 to 5 years before they burn out and find out that being an ATM is not sexy. And so, everybody wants to get the fresh meat. And they usually start off in Sundance a lot of times. And but anyway, there was a new investor that had won an audience award with Burden. And I had come to, Stephen and I kind of connected over one of his scripts that he sent to me. I gave notes, we had a meeting. And while we were talking, I didn't come to him with the specific film in mind. I just wanted to meet somebody new that was coming into the space. I heard his interest in as an evangelical and in religion, and he knew a lot of my films have a theme of religion and spirituality. And so we started talking, and then I asked him if he would read Faith to give me his thoughts about the script, just as I had just done for him. And he had just won the audience award with Burden, which was a Forrest Whitaker film, and sold it to Moviefone, sold it, quote unquote. And so by the time we had gone through and he had given some notes and Eli had incorporated those, we had a relationship going, and Stephen had proposed I had said 350 is the sweet spot, 350,000 is really a sweet spot. I love, that's a lot of money, and I really, for a character-driven film, that's mostly natural light, that's a great number. And he had pledged that, and then the Moviefone deal didn't happen, and then he dropped out, and then we had to recast and lower the budget. In the end, we made it for $125,000 through multiple sources, and Stephen came in with a smaller amount, and Gil Holland came in also for a small amount. Gil Holland initially was a big fan of the script, but said he wasn't going to invest unless the whole budget was less than $150, because he knew what the situation was. But when you're talking to investors, like everything, I'm talking to them about value system. I'm not talking about return. I don't even make indie films. I make art films. So it's difficult enough in the indie space, but in the art space, it's particularly hopeless. And so when I'm talking to somebody, it's really about values and what are we trying to do and what's the point of it. And so the chance of recoupment is pretty slim, and so the value connection has to be quite high. So that's what I look for with an investor, and that was, in the end, those that came in, and Todd came in to help out. It was all small portions, and Eli had to do a lot of other things to even get us there.
Well, I feel like there's a lot of value. It's at this festival, which is a really important festival for a launch pad. What are your plans after this in regards to festival rollout, and then positioning the film so that it gets profile, so that is the goal to get it distributed, get a distribution deal? What's next for you all?
I'll let the producers.
Yeah, producers.
Well, I think Kino Lorber's going to buy it.
I do have to point out, Todd has had films that I've worked on. So
That's true, yes.
and as a distributor, these kinds of films, I completely want to echo what Mike says. The kind of distribution that I work in, we are art house. That is the one thing that we look at. And so we look at the value, we look at whether or not this film is going to become a classic one day. We don't sit and look at like how much money it could possibly make. Like most of our films don't have major stars, sometimes they do. But I'm curious, the distribution and rollout and what's next for you.
I have some thoughts. So as I mentioned, I have a personal connection to the story. I felt like it would be a healing story. So for me, it's important that this film gets out there. So I'm looking at it, if a traditional distributor comes our way, fantastic. If they don't, I don't care. Like, I want to take it out whatever way. And I feel like with this story, it's a difficult sell because it doesn't fit like neatly into the faith-based genre, which is a super seller, great market. Eli didn't want to compromise on that. I actually really fully support that because it gives us, it's sort of broadening to me the genre. And I think with a direct appeal to different churches, particularly when they're talking about they're losing members of their congregation, that maybe this could be a tool for them to start dialogue, to start conversations. I was involved in the distribution of John Sayles' Honey Dripper eons ago when I was in grad school, and they were trying, at least in the initial stages, to do a non-traditional distribution model. It was hit or miss where it was successful, but I was very inspired by that process and wanted to do that. I'm also like a fan of trying to do a four-walling type situation. A friend of mine owns a theater in Long Beach where Eli and I both teach, so we feel like we could sell out the theater there and get it for cheaply through my connections, and then we can take it up to the area where we made the film in Atwater and Merced because we believe that the community will also be a support, and utilizing that to generate some sort of buzz. It's a tremendous amount of work, and for those of you first-time filmmakers, if you are able to get a feature together, I would encourage you to think all the way through to distribution. A lot of people are looking for their second film and they want to jump off as soon as somebody's going to give them the promise, and then they forget the first feature. Stick with it, make sure it gets seen. Even if you're not making a lot of money off of your efforts, that building your audience for what you have to say, I think, is very important.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think with this film, there's, besides it being, an art film, and by an art film I mean that it's really about engaging with the character outside of dialogue and plot. So these actors really convey, the moral dilemmas that they're going through in this particular story in a visual way. But at the same time, we do have hopes that the faith-based market, which is now expanding to include more diverse type films, and this is a film about questioning faith and our main characters in a state of challenged faith. And that's not always been in the faith-based space, something that they've been open to, but we think that they may be. And so we're trying to possibly look for an atypical type of distributor who could reach the audiences that typically don't go see art films. Mm-hmm. And that's a particular challenge for this, and we're hoping that possibly somebody will see that potential.
Mm-hmm. Great. Todd, do you have anything to add with rollout? I mean, you have I know that you have a lot, have worked on a lot of different films that have rolled out in many different ways. Maybe you can talk about like what you sort of are thinking for this film in particular that might be different than your other films that you've executive produced.
Well, I think that, what was already said is certainly very accurate. And to David's point, yes, I've been involved with 20 movies, and each of the 20 have had a different path to get them made and to finance, and a different path after they were finished. And I would say that, the one thing that is most important is to make sure, as Sharri said, is to follow through. The biggest frustration I've had on some of the films is, you show up at the film festival and you have a nice time and the premiere and a party, and then everyone leaves and that's the end of that. Everyone's on to their next project, and does different things and doesn't really spend as much time as needed, then I think certainly it is a lot of work. So sure, if some big distributor calls up and says, we want to pay you all this money and put it on our platform or put it out in theaters, that's great, but that usually doesn't happen. So I think there's work that's required to find the right avenues in the right places. Perhaps self-distribution is better than going to a platform that's not appropriate. So I think there's many different options that should be considered.
And then I get asked this a lot because I used to work at Kickstarter actually to help filmmakers raise money. I know you all did Seed and Spark, which they do a really, really great job there too. You raised about $13,000 off that, which is no easy feat for a narrative film. Can you talk about your experience? Is that a tool that you felt was helpful? Do you suggest it to other filmmakers who are doing a film around the budget of your film? What are your thoughts on that? And are there positives and negatives, more positives and negatives, more negatives and positives? What do you think?
Well, I was absolutely against doing. I did not want to do.
He's underplaying it, by the way.
Yeah,
Why not?
I hate the idea of you leveraging personal relationships to ask everybody I know for $25 or $50 or $100, because this is not the last film I'm going to make. And does that mean that every time I make a film, I'm going to have to do this? So, but I was ultimately the one that said, okay, we have to do a crowdfunding thing because of all of that stuff with money. I was like, okay, there's not enough money here. We can't do this for what we have, so we have to raise some more. And so that meant leveraging those relationships, and I mean, people were very generous, and it's great. It's a personality thing for me as much as I cannot. Oh God, it was awful sending those emails. Hey, Tommy,
we're almost there.
Oh,
give $1.
It was this most miserable.
Share it on your Facebook.
Yeah, it's just oh God.
But you 13,000 is pretty good.
Well, but. I would that is not money then that you're talking about the economics of a film. That's not money that's owed back to anyone. And so that it becomes really crucial when we're in this space where it's really, really hard to make your money back for these movies, and to not have just this chunk of the budget, which is not, it's a little less than, we're actually about 150. By the way, now a little less than 10% of the budget that we don't have to pay back. And that makes a difference in terms of when we're trying to find the home for it and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it was. I mean, Sharri can tell you, it was just pulling teeth for me because
Didn't we have a specific bill that we had to pay though, like the casting director or something?
No, I didn't go to the casting director. Went to a lot of it went to. Lawyer. You need a lawyer. You got to have somebody who's writing contracts, and there's no lawyer who's going to work for free to do this sort of stuff. So we had to pay for a lawyer.
I think we got a question already.
Sure. We can open it up. I'm sure you all have a lot of questions, so let's just start.
My question is, during the process of, trying to raise the funds, you considered crowdfunding, you considered investors, maybe personal relationships. Did you ever consider fiscal sponsorship, like going through a film independent fiscal sponsorship program to where you can then fill out grants because you have that 501c3 and then go to other businesses and other people that may have some money but they want that write-off? I'm just curious from a producer perspective, filmmaker perspective, if you discuss that or if you're for it or against it.
You guys want
the generally speaking, the 501c3 is, I think, I've found is good for documentaries, but in the fiction space, it's a little bit difficult because there is that incentive of a potential return. So, and that kind of eliminates that unless you're mixing. But generally speaking, with a lot of fiction films, they don't have as clear of an issue a lot of times as, let's say, documentaries. So I've had more success with going to affluent people who have that value system, who use the money the same way you would with a 501c3. It's still a write-down for them, and certainly with the tax law, they can write it off in the same year or so. And then there's still the chance of recoupment.
Mm-hmm. Exactly what he says. 501c3 for documentary or shorts, not features.
And in general, in terms of crowdfunding, you know, what I find with the crowdfunding is that, you know, we had a lot of myths about it. You know, when it first started, it was an exciting thing. But it is a useful tool in terms of trying to reduce the pain of asking friends and family for money. Once you have the crowdfunding site up, you don't have to like directly ask your dentist to write $25. You can just pass him or her the link to the crowdfunding site.
With like a thoughtful email.
Yeah, and it's just easier,
Seriously.
you know. They say, I've heard that there's a professor that teaches who funds indie films, and it says the 3 Fs, and he says friends, fools, and family are the 3 funders. And so the crowdfunding kind of helps with friends and family to kind of anonymously or in their own way, and it kind of reduces the pain that Eli was talking about.
I would just add one thing about crowdfunding. So I've done it, well, let me rephrase this. It's been done on a number of films that I've been involved with, but I acknowledge I have had nothing to do with it. And I do hear that it's quite onerous. But that said, some of the films I've been involved with, we've done when we didn't even need money. And we did it because I think the issue with a lot of these low-budget independent films is, even if you have the money to make it, nobody knows it exists. And if you can get 300 or 400 or 500 people to even donate $1 or something to now get on your email list and know this film is out there, I found that it's very helpful. And in fact, talking about Seed and Spark, I have a relationship with Emily Best, who runs it, in terms of a program whereby they are putting forth projects to myself and my partner that have had a certain number of funders and raised a certain amount of money that are still in need of some post-production funding to see if we'd be interested in helping them, and we've done that.
I do have to say, as somebody that worked in crowdfunding for 2.5 years, I literally entered that job without knowing what I was getting into, other than the fact that I knew that there were films out there that had tried crowdfunding before, and I was the one that was like sitting there hand-holding filmmakers, like, hey, you have to put yourself out a little bit, but it's not beggy, it's more, I'm doing this film. Independent filmmaking is tough, but I want you to join me in helping me get it made. And I think that goes a long way when you message it that way, a certain way. And then also when you raise the money, you do get to download the list of all your backers. So even if they gave $1, that's an email that that's your the beginnings of your street team that is going to help shout out the project. And Emily Best is a great example of Seed and Spark. She's fantastic, she and her team. If you're ever interested in Kickstarter, there is a phenomenal film team there. One person, Liz Cook, handles documentaries. The other person, Elise McCabe, handles narratives. They're at every festival. They have partnerships with Sundance. They have lots of connections, and you can email them at film@kickstarter.com. So it is onerous. It is a lot of work. You do have to be the type of filmmaker who's going to be ready to put yourself out there a little bit, but then you can raise like $13,000, and that really does help.
And just so you guys know, it wasn't just the crowdsourcing. I also put out Facebook ads and used Green Inbox, which is like essentially will email all of your LinkedIn contacts. And those, we got probably $3,000, $2,500 to $3,000 or so, were just from unexpected sources. So those things also paid off for anybody who's thinking about doing them.
But the bottom line is, in terms of, again, art films and films that are really working through visual means, we're seeing a drastic reduction in the budgets. So we did this for $150, and I was in contact recently with a film that was in Locarno, where it was an amazing looking film, and they did it for $25,000. And people are having different definitions of what a microbudget is, and I work in Venice in the Microbudget College, where we give out 4 grants every year for 150,000 euros to make a film. And when we started 8 years ago, that was a lot of money. That was a little bit of money for a microbudget. Now it's a lot of money. And so what we're seeing is an enormous amount of films really getting scaled to the under $100,000 just to deal with the reality of what these crowdsourcing and difficulties are.
More questions? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the thing we have to realize is that when we're in this film space, you know, especially in drama and especially in art space, we can exempt to some degree horror films and some comedies. We're in a place that really only has value through articulating an investor's value system. So we can't talk to somebody and say this is going to make money. We're not in, especially me. I'm not in a money-making business. I'm in a communications business which speaks to values. And the indie film space is driven by extremely wealthy individuals, Megan Ellison being the typical one, and the Gilberts out of Quicken Loans being another one. And these are people who have an enormous amount of money and are concerned with the state of our humanity. And Megan Ellison's films, you just look at Annapurna, and those are films that speak to value systems. She has a particular value system, and those films are articulating it. And it goes all the way down the line. Christine Vachon, she's not financing her films, but she's making films that go to a value system. And the people that are funding the independent space are people that are looking to articulate what they think is what the world needs and what their values are. So when we speak to potential investors, I don't speak about money, I speak about values, until I find somebody that wants to team up and join the team and share the passion of what the writer-director wants to do. And that's what drives the whole space. They can talk about it being profit. It's not. I mean, even Amazon doesn't make profit. Like how they run they've never posted a profit. So if those big guys are working on some other mystical kind of equation, then you can be sure that down below here, we need to understand that it's not driven by monetization.
Maybe I can add a comment also. So I think that there are different types of investors looking for different things. And certainly a lot of them are looking to make nice art films, and some of them are looking to make a profit, but there are others as well. So for example, I found one person that put in money to a film in a not insubstantial amount so her daughter could get a role in the movie. And there's another guy that really just thought it would be fun, and he and his wife and his kids came for the 4 days to hang out on the film set and came to the premiere, and they had a great time. It was like a vacation for them. And they were involved with the film, and while I think he would be happy to get his money back if he didn't, he felt, and he and his wife and family felt, that it was a good opportunity. And I don't think they did it for the art. It's not a particularly artful film. He just thought it would be a nice experience. And then I guess the one thing just to keep in mind in terms of getting money back, if you film, I know that in Memphis they have this tax incentive that they were talking about if you're a local person here to get some money back, but certainly in New York and in Louisiana and Georgia and other states, there are tax incentives. So in a scenario where you film a movie in some of these places, even if it doesn't recoup any money, you can still get 20 to 30% of your money back just because you filmed in a particular location. So that's something else to keep in mind.
Yeah, can I just,
just
from my point of view, it's also just to this point of looking for the value system, finding people like our investors who are interested in the material. If you're just looking for money, you're going to have people just this generic notion of money. People who they might be interested in some aspect of your movie, but they're going to want it to change if they're going to give you money. So Mike and Sharri both mentioned earlier how much money is in the faith-based market, and we met with some of those folks. And perhaps the second most, no, it was even more miserable than the crowdfunding thing, is me sitting in those rooms with these people who have gobs and gobs of money.
And they have ideas.
And they have ideas. And what we need to change this script so it fits in this market. And I'm just doing this, like, oh my God. But
again, he's underplaying.
Yeah. So that means that we can't make the movie, because we could make a much bigger budget movie if we did that. But I had no interest in making that movie. And so the people that come in, they don't come in for as much, but they're committed to the film. Like, our investors are committed to the film, and they want to see it all the way through. And I'm not having any fights with them about the material itself. You know, I mean, we're collaborators. They certainly, like, if they have notes and they have things that they want to say about the movie, I listen to them. But we're not at cross purposes, and that's really, really important, because it's stressful enough making a movie, and all of a sudden the people who funded the movie aren't happy with the finished product, or want to change the finished product. I can't imagine also going through the kind of legal battle over that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad you did not compromise the vision for this film, because it's really beautiful, and the performance is incredible. We have one question there.
Yeah, so in terms of quantifying the value of a faith-based film, one of my struggles with faith-based things is that my faith particularly happens in the ebbs and flows.
Happens what?
It ebbs and flows.
In ebbs and flows, okay.
It's good today, and then I lost everything, and I'm cutting
Sure.
everybody out. And so, but
This film will resonate with you.
what qualifies as you were talking about what fits into the faith-based market? And so what's too much, or what qualifies things that fit into that market?
So if you see the film, there are a few things that disqualify us from the faith-based. We have a few F-bombs, too, and a sex scene. Without those two things, we would be in the faith-based category.
Yeah, ish.
Ish. Also, because at the end, the film ends sort of, you're left to decide yourself, does his questioning of faith take him back to church or not? And if we had given a solid yes, then I think that would really send it into the faith-based sphere as it is now.
The thing that's most challenging about our film is that we spend an enormous amount of time in a state of doubt and questioning rather than a large amount of time affirming the answer. And so a lot of our characters' time is spent looking and not finding. And so that right away puts us into kind of dangerous ground where a lot of the faith-based films are about asserting the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like that in some ways yours trying to be a faith-based film is almost moving the needle of where the faith-based films need to go to kind of get to where a lot of people in this country are with their own faith? Because a lot of people are kind of in that flux of questioning because of the hierarchy or because of what their faith leadership is doing or not doing. So, in other words, like a lot of my adult children, they're not going to church.
Mm-hmm.
They were raised in the church, and that seems to be very typical of that age group. So it's almost like you're challenging that faith-based film to move a little bit into that space, which I like that. I like kind of the artsy part of that. But I think
Yeah.
it's interesting, that challenge.
Yeah, for me, that's a resounding yes.
Okay, yeah, I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the film is addressing, kind of a basic theological concern, which is what is the value of suffering, especially from, and that's one of the eternal questions. And I've made a lot of films about faith when I was actually started out to wanting to be a priest, and I come from a religious background. And so those are the big issues for me in terms of, where is God's grace, and does grace exist? And all of these films I've done, even Free Indeed, which was done here, in the end, it really comes down to this aspect of community. And if you want to find another presence in that aspect of community, then that's there for you. But the greater theological questions, I think, really are the big ones, which our film asks, which is, what is the value of suffering, and what is that? How can we have that world where such suffering exists? So, and that's what we struggle with.
Yeah, I would just say, in terms of I wrote the film keenly aware of the tropes of faith-based films, and it is those tropes are referenced. So I grew up an evangelical Christian, and I'm not anymore. And so the way I describe it is that I have an insider's knowledge with an outsider's perspective. And so I was keenly aware of the way those stories are typically told, and I wanted to use the tropes, those narrative tropes, and tell them in a different way, if that or use them in a different way, if that makes sense. So it's a movie, and it doesn't announce its awareness of those kind of faith-based conventions, but it's a movie that's keenly aware of those conventions and is trying to approach them in a really different way. In my opinion, as a writer-director, I don't know if I get the right to say that, but I'm going to say that.
Right there.
Can you talk a little bit about the decision to go from, say, the 350 range to the 150 range? At what point do you say, okay, we're just going to make this movie yet, versus we're going to hang in there for another 6 months, year, 5 years, whatever it takes to make it at that next budget range?
Do you mind if I? No, I'll answer this. So that's a very clear point in my mind. So we were set to go. We were set to go at 350 in May of last year, and we have everything all set up. I've got my crew set up. We're 2 weeks, 10 days from our start, something like that, and we get the notice that the money's not coming. That was one of the most brutal days of my life. Like it was like a death. I went into grief, like just grief. And so I'm a professor, and I am lucky enough to where I could be on sabbatical. I had sabbatical for an entire year to make this film, but that also meant that I had a ticking clock where I had to be back teaching in about 4 months. And part of the agreement of that sabbatical is I'm coming back with a movie, and now all of a sudden it looks like I'm not gonna. So we figure out a way that we can do that. I mean, poor Sharri. Sharri, she must have done 16 budgets, all at different ranges. What does it look like if we make it for $50,000? What does it look like if we actually have $400,000? And she showed me a budget. I think you showed me a budget for $100,000, and I look at it and go, "Oh my God, I can't make this thing for $100,000." So, but we figured a way to do it for $150,000. What meant I had to rewrite the script. And Mike's done this a million times, and Mike says, you're just trying to hold on to what the movie's about and lose anything that's not absolutely necessary to hold on to what the movie's about. And I figured out a way to do that. And when you're motivated, when I can see that, okay, we're not making the movie at that level that we thought we were going to make it at, but I can still see that we're going to make the movie, and we're going to make the movie the way I want to make the movie. It's just going to be a little bit smaller. It's really, really motivating. So I had that motivation that the movie's going to happen, because the other thing is there's...
No matter what.
No matter what, yes, thank you. I always get the title in there. I wrote the first draft, like I said, 10 years ago. Mike and my relationship started 7 years ago. And so I go from when we first begin that relationship, it's going to happen next Tuesday, to is this ever going to happen? Well, now I can see it didn't happen at 350, but I can see it's going to happen at 150. We have that. We can do that.
We didn't actually have it
Well,
when we started it.
We had it.
No, we didn't. We were close, but we weren't all the way
that's right.
there.
We didn't have it.
We didn't.
But ish.
No, at the end of the first week of production,
We had 100. Oh, that's right.
we had only enough money to cover payroll, and I didn't know how we were going to pay for the catering for the last part.
No, because he got 25.
It was after we started shooting.
Well, we got the agreement for the 25 the day before we started shooting.
Yeah, we didn't have the money. So that to me is not the money.
Okay, good point. Fair enough. But I could see it. And so that's really motivating, and I could still see the film being the film that I wanted to make. And so then you do. So I got over the grief, but it's also, again, that the Sisyphean thing of I'm the one rolling the rock up the hill, is I love all of these guys, right? I love them to death, and I cannot make the film without them. However, when that 350 fell out, if I say that's it, the movie's not happening, the movie's not happening. Because Mike's got 9 other projects that he's doing, and Sharri's got several other things that she's doing. And so I have to be the one that, like, okay, I've got this is the version, so I'm gonna make that version, right? And then we go make that version of it.
And how many days did you shoot? Like, how long was it?
It was an 18-day shoot.
18 days.
Yeah.
Let's get her.
Mm-hmm.
How
That's a question for them, because I'm always amazed that anybody would say yes to what I want to do.
I mean, I think that there's some of it's a blind faith, you know. There's this overall commitment. I only make films where the director has the final cut, and so I'm committed to this idea of the independent voice speaking from the from the margins. It's just the kind of the material and what I'm interested in, and I just have a commitment to the overall thrust of that journey. That we need to have those voices speak. And then one of the things we're not really talking about here, and one of the other things that attracted me to the project is that Eli comes from modest means, and I deal with a lot of filmmakers that are affluent, you know, and that they have the financial ability to kind of, you know, get help from their family, or have come from a situation where they don't have economic pressures in terms of the work schedule of Eli. And those voices aren't heard enough in independent, certainly in art space. And I think that I have an overall commitment to wanting to have those voices speak. So when we're going from day to day or week to week, it's an overall blind faith for me, in the sense that I have a commitment to this journey.
Same for me. I just want one more thing. I also want to mention, we have a couple of additional producers who are not on here, who were in like department heads, our DP and our editor, who both came on as producers because they were cutting rates, pulling favors in order to get this film done. So it's not just us. It was the entire team was in because they believed in the project and they wanted to see it get made.
If you had gotten the $350,000, or say even $500,000
Oh.
film, would you have made a different film, or do you think it would have been, for the most part, the same film with maybe a little more finesse or sparkle?
Yeah, it would have been. It would have been very close to the same film. There would be some differences. There would be one of the big things to me, or what the movie is about more than religion or faith, is this notion of culture and the way culture informs identity. And more money would have allowed me to explore that a little bit more. I could get out into the world and have more people in it and that sort of stuff. So that's the thing that I had to find a way to fold those ideas, those themes in on a smaller scale that would have been more possible. I could have done more with that with a little more money, but.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the draft that was different was that the father and son relationship was developed more in the early
Yeah, a little bit, and there was more with the wife and her family.
Her family, so there was a little more backstory. But, you know, 18 days, 3 6-day weeks, you know, puts a kind of crimp on the coverage, and it puts a crimp on, you know, what you're doing. And luckily we had great, you know, actors who went along with it. But I like to say the difference between like 150 and 350 is significant, because I've been in both places, to what it does a lot of times with coverage, and just, you know, we were just down to the bone in terms of what material we had to make the final cut. And, you know, the strength of Eli's vision was able to maintain that. And sometimes with directors, especially first-time directors, we don't have that. So for me, it was particularly scary going into a first-time director situation where we only had these amount of time, where often when I have the 350, I can, you know, say to the director, okay, let's shoot some more, let's not move on, or I don't think you have it, or let's get it from another angle. And that's the difference for me, the difference between 150 and 350, and with a lot of first-time directors, that can make or break a film, you know. In this case, we turned out great because Eli had been living the film and was able to condense, but a lot of first-time directors can't, and that shrink down will put a hurt on them that they can't recover from in terms of what that does.
Yeah. And our DP lit the whole thing with one light. And I'm not exaggerating. One light, a piece of paper towel, and some practicals. Because we couldn't really afford much more equipment.
His name is Richard Halma, and he's fantastic.
I just wanted to ask, as far as the budget goes, did you guys have a lot of discussions as far as like marketing, promotion, like what publicists and things like that, obviously the crowdfunding does go into that as far as building your email list, but I would just love to hear about that part as far as, like you mentioned, thinking all the way to distribution, what discussions you guys have had in that area, and maybe, where, has that changed now that it's finishing or taken to festivals?
Do you want to, at 150, there's no money in the marketing budget.
I bought a book called Faith-Based Marketing.
That was the marketing budget. She bought the book. That was it.
They had a lot of, anybody who's making faith-based movies, they got the names and addresses of a bunch of different churches as well as their numbers. So, and they also had any sort of publications that would cater to that market. So, essentially Sunday night before we came to the festival here, I hit up all the local, anybody in Tennessee got a press release from me.
Yeah, I think I just want to chime in because I get asked this a lot because I do publicity. I would not spend your money on a publicist yet for a festival unless it was going to Sundance or one of the big ones. I think there's going to be a publicist at every festival that you go to, no matter how big or small. And I would advise, if you're a filmmaker that goes to mid-tier festivals, to really tap into them. Learn who the local press are in the local community, find out what journalists are going to be around at that festival and connect with them organically, not stalking them on email, but meeting them. And there are a lot of these festivals have really good quality journalists that are covering the festival. But I've seen filmmakers spend a lot of money on publicists who really sell to them. Oh, you really need me for this festival, and then they spend a lot, and then they don't get the return. Mm-hmm. That's just my advice as a publicist.
I would add, I've been involved with a lot of films at a lot of festivals, and the only ones that I think are worth doing are really probably the top 4 or 5 festivals. And if you're not in one of those,
do it yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can do it yourself. I think if you're a filmmaker, you really have to learn how PR and marketing works. It's 360 degrees. It's writing organic emails to the press and being really thoughtful with how. It's all about investing your time and sharing that value and sharing that to journalists. And the thing I hear, I'm really at this point deep with press, and I'm BFF with them. I stalk them lightly, and it's very strategic. I take them to dinner, I take them to lunch, and they all complain about getting zillions and zillions of random emails from filmmakers and people they may not know. So it's just finding out how to connect with them in a really organic way and do the research. If there's a publicist or a marketer who is in your face trying to sell themselves, trying to get you to spend money, do the research, find out what films they work on, ask people who have worked with them if they are worth the money. Otherwise, you're going to be spending money on that. And publicists charge a lot.
And I would say on the flip side, if you are fortunate enough to get to Sundance or South by Southwest or Tribeca, and you're a $150,000 film and don't have money for a publicist, figure out a way to get it, because showing up to these festivals with no publicist is not a good idea.
And the ones that have a track record of going to those festivals too. So.
Yeah, right.
Well, anything else? I think we have 2 minutes. Hey, any last thoughts on, you got this film made no matter what, on a tight budget? Oh, did someone have? How long from the first dollar raised to the last dollar raised? Oh, I guess you all can talk about the fundraising.
Maybe a year?
A year.
Maybe. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, a year-ish again.
Great. Any last thoughts on getting your film made no matter what?
Do you have another question?
Anyone else? Sure.
Yes. Yeah, I because The 350 film doesn't exist, right? It's just a figment of my dreams. And so, like I said, my day job is a professor, and one of the things I'm constantly talking about with my students is the most important thing is the making. The making is everything, because like I was just having a conversation with one of the filmmakers here who's got a short film, and we live out in LA, and everybody wants the old Woody Allen joke in Annie Hall, take a meeting, will you take a meeting with me? Everybody wants to be taking meetings, because nobody, it's very, very rare for it to actually be real. You're in pre-production and there's money in the bank and you're actually getting ready to do something, right? The thing is coming, it's coming down the pipe. So if they're not, most people are not in that state very often, so they want to feel like they're doing something. And so they want to take meetings, and I can't stand that. I hate it. It's just the biggest waste of time. And so at 150, the thing is real, and we were making it, and we made it. And so what I'd like, and I want the film to do well, and the film's going to go out, and it's going to have its life, and I've got other things that I want to do next, and they are of different sizes, because I'm going to be trying to make the bigger thing, but the bigger thing is going to take a little while, so it's important for me to be making something, so I'm going to make a smaller thing, right? Because the making is everything. That's it, because that's when it's like you're actually doing the thing, and the 350, it doesn't exist.
Great. I think we have to end. I have one thing to add. I did not thank the Hohenberg Foundation, who is sponsoring these talks. So thanks to the Hohenberg Foundation and our cast and crew of Faith. And I hope you see it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tomorrow night.
Yeah, did we say that? Tomorrow night it's screening again at 7:15.
7:15, yeah. Malco on the Square. Thanks for coming, you guys.
Thanks.
Oh, there's Fred. Hey, Fred.